I'm going live. Hello, beautiful people. If you are watching me on the replay, thank you so much for watching me on the replay. If you've never been into my YouTube before, my name is Celeste. I'm a therapist from Boston. And my goal in coming on here is to help you shift the way you think. That's something that I've always been able to do. And today is actually my birthday. So I'm so excited. Wednesdays, I come on here live and record my bonus episodes live. So I'm going to gear that up to record this bonus episode. But every single Wednesday, bonus episodes will be recorded on here. We talk about things that everybody struggles with, and then we kind of bring up these solutions and ways in which we can deal with them. And once that happens, I think that the more we hear these things, the more that our mind starts to shift, and that's how we start to think differently. So I'm going to get ready to record. So if you know anything about podcasting, I use GarageBand to record my episodes. And let me see, I'm gonna record. So and you can find my podcast on every single podcasting platform there is. So record. Hello, beautiful people. Thank you so much for joining another episode of Celeste Therapist Podcast. My name is Celeste, and I'm a therapist from Boston. If you've never been here before, thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate you. Today's Wednesday. It's November the 6th, and it's actually my birthday. I turned 37 today. And as I reflect on my birthday, I think we all do that, right? When our anniversary comes, birthday comes, and there's a self-reflection that takes place. When I start to reflect on my birthday, I think about my journey and where I am currently, and the things that have gotten me to where I am. I consider myself to be successful because I've been able to master what takes place internally, right? And I think that a lot of us would never think of that as a marker for success. I know me growing up, I never thought about my feelings, my emotions. I never took into account how my feelings and my emotions affected me. It literally affects everything that we do. So one thing I always ask people, every time I see people or I'm in same space with them, I say, how are you feeling today, right? Because the normal answer that everyone gives us is, I'm fine, thank you. And a lot of times we're really not fine. But we say that we're fine. And I feel like we've learned to master the good times, right? To the happy things that happens, the celebrations that take place. I feel like we've figured out a system and a way to master them. But the hard times, I think that we have not figured out a system in a way that we can deal with it. So if you follow me on on my personal social media site, you know I just came from vacation. And while I was on vacation, so if you don't know, I have 4 kids. I have a 16-year-old. He's going to be 17, 15-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 7-year-old. And my 8-year-old contacted me while I was on vacation, and he was crying, and he said, Mommy, I feel nervous. I feel scared. So because of how much I value emotions and feelings, I've been able to teach my children how to not just identify what they're feeling, but to also describe what they're feeling. And my 8-year-old, he gets anxious a lot, right? And he understands it. And so he says, it's kind of like I have this pit thing in my stomach where it feels twisted, like I'm in trouble, but I'm not in trouble. And it just came out of nowhere. And so we talked on the phone, right? And he can feel it. And I said, okay, so let's take out your journal. So I have my kids, they have a journal where they write about their day or they write about how they're feeling. And I said, let's take out your journal and let's write. And at first he was kind of hesitant because he was just kind of stuck in his feelings, you know, and, you know, this is the way I do with my kids, I do with my adult clients. And we can get stuck in our feelings that we feel immobilized, like we cannot do anything. And he wrote, you know, I am feeling nervous. I don't understand why. So he wrote that in his journal, and he was still feeling it. And one of the things that he's been able to identify is that when he runs or if he's like doing any kind of movement, it's really beneficial for him. So I said, all right, like go to the backyard and why don't you do a couple of laps? And he was like, I don't want to. And I said, all right, baby, you have 2 choices, you know. I said, you can sit in your anxiety, or I said, you can work on the skills that you've been able to identify to use, your coping strategies, and help yourself deal with it differently. And when I said it that way, because I gave him an option, when I said it that way, he was like, you know what, I'm going to do some jumping jacks. So he sat there and he did 30 jumping jacks. And little by little, his stomach started to change. The feelings that he was feeling changed. And he said he had like a lot of energy now, like a lot of like positive energy. And so when I think about us as adults, and the only reason why he's able to articulate the things that he does the way he does and describe it is because I've been working with them on this since they can talk, right? And so he's able to identify that. But I was never able to identify my feelings. I was never able to identify my emotions. And as I got older, I realized how much my emotions, my thoughts, so many different things inside of me affected my actions. So yes, I was in college. Yes, I was getting jobs. Yes, I was making money, but I never considered myself to be like successful. At the time I did, but when I look back, I feel like I wasn't. And I want you to think about your emotions and your feelings. And I want you to think about like how much it stops you from getting to where you need to be. And if you're somebody that says like, wow, Celeste, that story was good. Like, I wish I was able to express how I feel, right? Because I know a lot of times we could be sad inside, but it'll manifest in an angry way. Like I've met some really amazing people who people around them will say they have anger issues. And it's not that they're angry, it's more so that they're depressed, or it's more so that they're anxious. And so depression and anxious and the different stuff that we deal with, it always is going to look different on everybody. There's no cookie cutter way of emotions manifesting, right? And the way that we deal with it, it looks differently. So many of us are struggling with different kind of issues or different kind of addictions because it's manifesting in that way. Like if some people that may be anxious may find themselves hoarding and buying a lot of clothes and buying a lot of things. And in the moment as they're buying it and purchasing these things, you feel okay, but then you're stuck with all of these things and you can't figure out like why the anxiety is not going anywhere. So the way that you've decided to deal with it just doesn't work for you. So I have some solutions, right? I really want people to not only like understand the things that we struggle with on my podcast, I also want people to feel empowered to deal with these things. Yes, I believe therapy is like great, and I believe therapy is beneficial, and I believe therapy can really help, but I also understand that therapy is not always accessible for everybody. I also understand that therapy doesn't work for everyone. And one of the things that I really want to stress to people is that like healing is not a one size fits all, and healing is not like a direct shot where it's like, okay, I just got to do this and then I'm going to be okay. Let me just take this pill. Let me just see this doctor. And I think that we have to really start to look at mental health. We really have to start looking at like our healing in a really holistic way and looking at all areas of our lives to really come up with a plan that's going to work for us, right? If I had diabetes and my sugar was a certain level, the doctor will clearly tell me that, you know, when it gets under 60 or above 60, take this orange juice or take this insulin, right? There's like this cookie cutter way that people deal with diabetes. There's no cookie cutter way to deal with trauma. There's no cookie cutter way to deal with our mental health when we're struggling. And I think that the more we become self-aware of ourselves and understand ourselves and understand what works and understand what doesn't work, I think we can really create a nice little system and a way that we can deal with it, right? If you work a 9 to 5, if you have a regular job and you go to work every day, you've been able to maintain a job, you've been able to acclimate yourself to that system because you survive, right? Surviving means I have to go to work and I have to get paid. Now, some of us are struggling with like actually living our life. And if you want to work on like really living your life, I think it's important to think about like what systems are going to work for me. And it's also equally important to work on maintaining consistency in the process, right? And that's the part that a lot of us struggle with is the consistency. But I really want you to like kind of shift your thinking and change your perspective and tell yourself, like, if I can go to this 9 to 5 every day, why can't I work on living every day, right? If living requires me to get up a little bit earlier and to meditate something, I'm going to do that, right? If living requires me to go for a jog, I'm going to do that. If living requires me to write down how I'm feeling, I'm going to do that. And so I really want you to work on like taking charge in how you are feeling, taking charge and not feeling that you just have to be and stuck. The story I told you about my son, he had those options. He had an option to sit in his anxiety, or he had an option to do something about it, right? If we had a headache, if we had a stomach ache and we took Pepto-Bismol or Tylenol, like we will do that quickly because it's like, okay, if I take this Tylenol, it's going to go away right away. Like my headache will go away really quick, right? But sometimes if we do some of the things that we need to do to live, we don't see the results right away, right? We can't see what's taking place in real time. And so I really want to encourage you to like work on that. So I said I had some solutions. If you're struggling with like how you're feeling and not really able to like identify it, and you can only identify the good times and you really want to identify other times, I really have some solutions. So number one, it's important to acknowledge how you are really feeling. Like how you're really feeling, like saying you're fine is not really something that you would find on an emotion chart. Like I really want you to like really sit down and identify how you're really feeling. And one way you can do that is by like using a feelings chart. You can Google feelings chart and print it out. My kids have like a simple one on their door. There's a really more in-depth one where you have all different types of emotions. I need you to start with that, identifying how you're feeling. Number two, try to work on addressing the source of your feeling. So when I'm sitting with my clients, they'll say like, oh, like I'm really like feeling, I'm upset. I'm like, well, why are you upset? Like there's always this why question that I ask afterwards, because I want people to really be able to acknowledge and understand the source of their feelings, right? So there are these thoughts that we have, and the thoughts that we have causes us to feel a certain way, right? And the feelings that we feel, we end up acting in that manner if we don't have control over it. So if I'm feeling overwhelmed, if I'm feeling anxious and I'm not able to identify that, but I know if I shoot up, it's going to take that feeling away. My shooting up is a direct link to me feeling anxiety. I remember sitting with somebody in the hospital, and they were like using for about 15 years, and they had been off of substances for about a month. And they came in the hospital like with a lot of symptoms of anxiety. And I heard his story, and I remember I said to him, you probably started using because of what's happening right now. Like it was a way to cope with the anxiety and the trauma that you've experienced. And because nobody talks about the things that take place after anxiety, after trauma, all we know is that we're experiencing it. And because we're experiencing it, we're trying to figure out how to deal with it. And if nobody's telling us how to deal with it, the first time we take that drink, the first time you shoot up, the first time we smoke that weed, we realize like, oh my gosh, this feels good. It's taking it away. And so we're never really identifying the source of the issue. We're only able to understand that it's taking it away. But the problem with the drug or the liquor or the food or the shopping, the problem with that is that it becomes an addiction because we need more and more of it to help us deal with the struggle that we're having internally. So understanding how you're feeling and then addressing the source of the issue. Number three, be open about it. Don't judge yourself, because it makes it hard to process, right? So some of the feelings of jealousy, embarrassment, shame, like some of those things that we may struggle with are things that are really hard. Like it's like requires a sense of vulnerability, and like who wants to be vulnerable? And I think a lot of times we've always associated vulnerability to weakness. And I have to tell you, like, that doesn't make any sense. Like the fact that I'm able to like acknowledge when I'm feeling depressed, acknowledge when I'm feeling anxious, that's actually made me a lot stronger. right? And there's, contrary to popular belief, if you want to portray this image of being okay and being strong and you're really not, your breaking point is going to come when you least expect it. Like, you're going to be walking around and you're going to be breaking and not understanding why. Like, I choose not to do that. And the reason why is because I like to have control. It doesn't mean that the emotions don't come, but the way that I'm dealing with the emotion starts to look differently. So definitely be open with yourself. Number 4, let your emotions run its course, right? Sometimes it doesn't change overnight, right? The story I told you about my son and how I said, you can either like do something about that anxiety that you're feeling now, or you can sit in it. Right. And if he sits in it, it's just going to stay. He could have done those jumping jacks and the feeling still could have been there, but he started the process. And so I need you to understand that you have to start the process, allow it to run its course. We allow happiness to run its course, but the pain is sometimes it's hard to do. And sometimes we just can't escape it. Like, you have to go through it. So many times we've like gone around it. We've tried to like mask it. And I always tell people, okay, you want to mask it? How is it that you can escape something that's happened to you? Like, you know what I mean? Like, the thought of us like really trying to, and it's kind of like the judge, when the judge, when they say something in the courtroom and the judge is like, strike what you just heard. And I'm in my mind, I always be like, well, how could I unhear what I just heard? Like, you can't unhear it. You can't unsee it. You can't unexperience it. Your mind and your body keeps the score. I can't stress that enough. Your mind and your body keeps the score. So even if you tell yourself, like, I'm not going to think about it, I'm not going to deal with it, it's happening, but you're not able to establish the link in the way that it's happening. The last thing I want to say about this process is that it's a journey. Like, life's a journey. This process is a journey. And you have to allow that journey to happen, right? It's not like you can race your way through it. Taking it like literally, if you take it like one day at a time, I think like that's something that's so important. There is this author, Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. One of the things that he said that I loved, and The Power of Now is a book that I highly recommend. One of the things about my enlightenment, I told you guys today's my birthday, and I've been thinking about like my journey, and I got tired of being sick and tired. I got tired of living the way I lived, and I felt like there was another way to life, like I really did. And so one of the things I started to do, I started to question, I started to process, I started to read different things, like quotes became a big deal for me. And one of the things Eckhart Tolle says is the primary cause of unhappiness is never the situation, but your thoughts about it. The primary cause of unhappiness is never the situation, but our thoughts about the situation. And so when you think of, and if you say to me like, Celeste, like, I've gone through a lot, how could you tell me that like the situation doesn't cause me to feel the way I feel right now? And so one of the things I would challenge you to do is to mourn the loss of the life you wanted. Some of us we're started with some bad cards. Believe me, I know. Not only did I experience it, but I've also heard hundreds of stories of people where I try to figure out like, how are you still here? Because you started off on like you had a bad hand when you started off. And so mourning the loss of the life that you wanted or that you deserve to have, and working on telling yourself that, yes, back in the day, like I had no control over what happened, but today my healing is my responsibility, right? And so the situation of like, I didn't have this, or this happened to me, or nobody protected me, or whatever the case is that's holding you back, you have to work on forgiving yourself or forgiving someone else. And it doesn't mean you have to be around that person, but it does mean that you have to figure out, how am I going to let go of this and like reframe it and say like, you know what, today's a new day and I have to work on my healing process. I think that's huge. I think that's really huge. So I really hope this topic was helpful. I hope this makes sense. Don't forget, like, you can find me streaming on YouTube. I stream the bonus episodes live. So even if you don't catch it live, you can always catch this on the replay. I'm on every podcasting platform. We are going to be opening up season 3 of Celeste the Therapist podcast. So if this is your first time in this podcast, when my seasons are in play, I interview people every single Monday who are doing things to empower the lives of others. So we hear their story, and we talk about how they were able to deal with the situation and what they're actually doing now in life. And so I'm going to be celebrating November 30th, the start of season 3. So if you are in the Boston area, the link for that event will be in the show notes. So I appreciate you guys. Every social media site. Don't forget, I have 2 books currently, 365 Days of Intentional Living. This is a guided journal. And in this journal, I literally ask you something different every single day. So this is good. And then I also have this other book called Relationship Goals. And Relationship Goals is a guide to a healthy relationship. Oh, am I doing it backwards? I am. It's still I think because of the screen. Relationship Goals is a guide to a healthy relationship. So this book is a physical book. It's a quick read, as you can see. But you can also get it on audio. And the audio is something that is going to be emailed directly to your email address. So you can find all of that at celestetherapist.com. If you want to holler at me and say hi, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Periscope, YouTube, all of the social media platforms you can find at celestetherapist.com. So until next time, I will talk to you guys later. All right, let me press stop. Hey. All right, so I finished. That's basically how I record my bonus episodes. So I've been doing this for like a year now, so it's easy for me. Before, when I first started doing these bonus episodes, I would like stop and replay. I'd be like, oh my gosh, I said that wrong, because I don't know how to edit. So that's how I do it. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I will talk to you guys later.